Hello, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Michelle Lanter-Smith, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at EPAY Systems. Our webinar today is called How to Reduce Scheduling Headaches and Increase Your ROI. Joining me is John Gattaiuso. He is our lead senior sales engineer here at EPAY. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, everybody that joined us today. Really appreciate your time.
We have a really good session lined up for the next hour. We're going to talk about scheduling and why you really should care about scheduling and how it can help you with your bottom line, your employee engagement, your employee morale, and so on. And then we're going to spend some time actually showing you our scheduling system. John's going to take you through our software so you can see how our scheduling system works and some of the nice features that we have there to help you meet those objectives of really planning out your workforce, optimizing it, and making sure your folks know when they have to work. A big advantage to helping keeping your employees engaged and happy. So that's our session today. Thanks again for joining us. Before we get started, let me just tell you a little bit about EPAY Systems. So EPAY has been around since 2001. That's when we were founded, and we're here located in the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois. We are really thrilled to have more than 150,000 work sites around the world that have our solutions. And our heritage really is around workforce management, time and labor management, and things like scheduling. We believe that in a blue-collar or gray-collar environment, it's time and labor management that can really give you the edge in terms of increasing your margins or reducing your labor costs and really helping you meet your SLAs with your clients and mitigating your compliance risk. So employers that have a distributed workforce, which is the kind of employers that we tend to work with, they need this kind of control and they need this type of workforce management that helps them deal with shift differentials, minimum wage things, sick leave, union contracts, all kinds of things. They need a very flexible time engine that can help them set up these payrolls, and they can meet these many requirements that they have to meet. And that's where EPAY flourishes. In addition to that, though, we do have a full human capital management suite. We provide our clients with everything from pre-hire to retire. So applicant tracking, onboarding, HR, benefit admin, of course, time and labor management, payroll, and even performance management. In addition to that great platform that we provide our clients, we have excellent customer support. Everybody gets a premium 24/7 customer support, and they get a dedicated customer service manager. Our customer service manager are just not your normal type of call agents. These are individuals that have bachelor's of science degrees in computer science and have many years in time and labor management and have worked with their clients to help them optimize the solution at their location. And because of the great customer service that we provide and our platform, we're really excited about our customer retention rate at 98%. You'll see some of the logos at the bottom of the screen. We help clients anywhere from small to mid-size to large. But again, we focus on that distributed environment. That's enough about EPAY. I think it's time to talk about scheduling, don't you think, John?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, scheduling, why is it that it's so important to do? And I think Sam Walton said it best. So no matter how you slice it in any type of business, payroll is one of the most important parts of your overhead. And overhead is one of the most crucial things you have to fight to maintain your profit margin. And anything you can do, whether it's scheduling, monitoring your overtime, those type of things can help your profit margins. And that's really why we need to look at it. So scheduling can affect a lot of things. It can affect your company's productivity. It can ensure that you're putting the right employees in each role when clients have certain qualifications or certifications that they need to meet. It can show how close you are to pushing an overtime because you have a schedule, so you have that benchmark in place. profitability. It can affect your overall functionality of how your workflows work and how your clients are served. It can impact absenteeism amongst your employees. If they know their schedule and know what's going to happen in their life, they tend to be happier folks. It can affect turnover. The list goes on. Sadly, though, not everybody uses schedules, and a lot of American employees really don't know what their work schedule is going to be. In 2016, they did a study of U.S. residents, and 80% of hourly workers report fluctuations in the number of hours they work from week to week. And that those fluctuations are about 38% of their usual work hours. So that's a big swing, big swing. Can you imagine? That's more than 2/3 of people, don't know what they're going to be working week to week. And that's not because of them. That's because of employers. So compounding the problem is that schedules are not just inconsistent, but, they're also unpredictable. Clients need things at the last minute, something changes, there's a new order, what have you. 40% of the hourly workers that I just spoke about report knowing their schedule a week or less in advance, with 28% reporting 3 days or less in advance. Can you imagine planning your life around that? That's a pretty tough thing to do. So in a nutshell, scheduling impacts you, the employer, from a profitability-wise, your clients, because you need to have the right employees there to meet your SLAs, and it affects big time your employees and their well-being and morale. So now let's get and expose the elephant in the room, John. What makes scheduling so difficult?
Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into play, right? You need to look at, are you giving the employees the right number of hours to work? Are they going to be going into overtime by scheduling them? Those are all important things. But also you want to make sure that you're not scheduling people that are on PTO. And you need to make a mental note, right? If you're doing things manually, and I've seen this personally, my mother-in-law works for Jewel, and she doesn't get her schedule until the week before, on every Monday. And she has to call in if she isn't working on Monday. Otherwise, she just doesn't know when she's scheduled to work, right? Now, if she needs to request off a day, and she only works 3 days out of the week, so it's not a big time, 5 days a week. She's working 3 days out of the week part-time. But if she needs to have a Sunday off, or she needs to have a Saturday off because there's a party going on, she has to tell her well in advance. Otherwise, she doesn't remember. Her boss doesn't remember to not schedule, right? So those become issues, right? But then also think about it. If that manager's manually writing down, and she's got 10 people that she has to manage their schedules and make sure they get enough hours, if somebody's requesting a day off, well, who does she fill in, right? And now she has to start to see, okay, who can fill in this day? Did I give them enough hours? And now you're letting somebody mentally go through that gymnastics to make sure that it's actually working, right? And is it going to disturb, any kind of shifts that are going on, because they work certain hours? Is that going to have any effect? So you also have to be ready, though, because there's times when people are going to get sick. They're not going to show up because their car breaks down and things like that. Now you have to go back and see, can I live without that person, or do I need to get that filled in? And if I do need to get it filled in, who am I going to fill in for that process? And now I got to go to my Rolodex and figure out, okay, who's the next person in line that I can get? And it's typically one person that you end up calling because you know that they're the most reliable. And then what you end up doing is you're incurring more costs than you should because you're spending a lot of time or a lot of overtime with this one employee versus trying to spread it out so that it gets, if there is overtime, it's evenly spread out. But also you can try to curb that overtime by not scheduling it overtime.
Yeah. What other type of challenges are there when it comes to scheduling? I mean, there's a whole slew of them.
There is. So when you start looking at, different things, right, you've got tight margins, right? You want to make sure that if you schedule to your budget, you're going to be profitable. You know, we have customers that 70% of their cost comes up from their labor, right? That's a big portion. So having a tight budget, but also scheduling to that budget also becomes important. Because now, if you're scheduling to that budget, you know you're going to be within your limits. And there's other things to look at as well that we can talk about later on. But you know, having complex shifts there, you know, maybe they're not there every day. Maybe they're there every other day, and maybe the time slots aren't always the same. It's 7 to 2 one day. It's, you know, 3 to 6 another day. You have those complexities around there. You can also look at, you know, they work in different work sites, right? And how are you going to manage those different work sites? One thing we see in terms of statistics is that 20% of the employees work 60% or more of that overtime, right? Think about that. That's calling in, again, Johnny Reliable to come in every single time because you know he's going to show up. But is that fair to the other employees, right? Now you start to get into a compliance risk. There's other instances where I've heard customers say that, you know what, I'm always short. It's mandatory to have overtime. And guess what? You're going to have higher no-shows that show up. Again, you're going to have your overtime, but you're going to have a lot of no-shows that show up. And then what happens? Now other people are having to pick up the slack for that. You also may have certain credentials for certain jobs, right? If I'm a forklift driver, I better have my CDL license. If I don't, I shouldn't be driving the forklift, right? Those are important things. You need to be able to schedule that because also when you're working with schedules and you need to update things on the fly, those are things that need to be taken into consideration. Say, okay, I can fill in John with Michelle because they have the same credentials, right? Or maybe they've got a higher credential, which means I can fill them in this spot. So all of that becomes important as you're looking at those various challenges from a scheduling standpoint.
Well, probably all of you on the phone are here because you know you need to do something about scheduling, and you know that if you don't address it and automate it somehow, you are facing some major, you know, risks. If it isn't clear already from some of John's antidotes in his facts, a bad calendar or a bad schedule, whatever you want to call it, is a total nightmare for you and for your employees. And without addressing it, it really keeps you exposed to risk. You lose employees and you lose customers. You continuously increase your costs because you're putting overtime on people that, you know, probably you're, like John said, counting on the same person, and overtime is going up. And you really don't know how you're doing against your budget. You're just picking people to come in and work. And you're decreasing productivity because, as we'll talk in a little bit, people that work a lot of hours, their productivity tends to go down after 50 hours. And again, if you're doing things where affect certain laws or whatever in your state or your city, and you're not in compliance, that can cause risk also. So a predictable schedule could mean, you know, think about this, your employees decide to stay with you for much longer, solving what is probably the greatest challenge for hourly labor, and that's turnover.
Right, and think about it. If an employee knows that they're going to be working X amount of hours every week, that's important for them. That's the reason why they stay, because they know they're getting this many hours, and they don't have to fill the gap with, I don't know if I'm going to get these hours, because ultimately they have bills that they need to pay, right? And that's kind of important for them to know that I'm getting these hours, I'm getting these dollars. It helps them budget their money as well. So it's helpful in that way.
Right. So the name of the game is really keeping turnover down. And again, a lot of our clients in the contracting services business have turnover at 100 to 200%. You know, anytime you can kick that down, you're putting more money into the company's profits. So there was a study done by the Center for American Progress, and it found that the typical cost of turnover for a worker making less than $50,000, which is probably a lot of the folks that you guys are taking care of or in your company, making $50,000 annually, the total cost of replacing them is 20% of their annual salary. That's huge. So if you can get turnover down by making people happier because they know when they're going to work, and it makes them happy and they want to stay, then there's some real dollars around that. So if any of you are looking at thinking about a scheduling system and either it's an additional cost to your current vendor, or with EPAY, we include our scheduling and advanced scheduling in our system. But the way you can help really justify it is you look at, if I can reduce turnover by using scheduling, I can save that 20%. So turnover is a really bad cycle that results not only in loss of employees, but often a loss of your clients. It may start with very simple situations, like a worker not showing up, for a shift, or a project falling behind, but these negative experiences perpetually create these costly cycles, and it just keeps going around and around, and you get, bottom line, you end up with unhappy clients too, and they leave you. So you don't want to lose your talented workers, you don't want to lose your profitable clients, and retraining is just, it takes a long time and it's very costly. So what is the real cost then of overtime? Well, overtime is obviously something that happens a lot when you don't have a good scheduling system. And multiple studies over the years on laborers working very long hours for protracted periods demonstrate that, it's expensive. And it's expensive in a couple of ways. Economically for you, it's very expensive. Though the standard work week is defined as 40 hours a week, many hourly employees work extended hours. And that requires, this level of overtime from them in order to keep operations running. And the question is how long is that overtime and how many hours over what is a good number? So you have the cost of the morale, and you have to think about, are you putting overtime in the right place? Can you cross-train people so that somebody doesn't have to do overtime to do a job, that somebody else can do it and still stay under that 40 hours? So those are the types of things you have to consider. But then you have other stuff where, you can't control, like no-shows, right? No-shows contribute, or call-offs, some folks call it, contribute to overtime costs because many employees, have to fill in for these absentee workers. And they've already done their regular 40 hours. So that means you obviously have to pay them time and a half in most states, or in California, obviously double time, or a little bit differently. So again, additional costs. And then you have your busy periods and your unplanned demand, and that can cause a huge surge. So overtime economically, really, usually for most folks, causes an issue. There are some businesses out there where overtime, they just pass it right through the client and it's not a big deal. But for most of us, overtime really affects that bottom line. Now, in addition to your bottom line, it affects your employees. So studies have associated overtime and extended work schedules with an increased risk of hypertension, cardiovascular disease, fatigue, stress, depression, all kinds of muscle-skeleton disorders, chronic infections, diabetes, mortality, it goes on and on. And all of this, of course, increase your health costs, another huge cost that you have to deal with. And it also leads to basic burnout of our employees. And so you, again, create another vicious cycle of burnout, absenteeism, they don't come to work, and then you have to increase your overtime costs to go get someone in, and again, it keeps going on and on. So if you can really try to control your overtime and do better planning, it can help your employees, and it can also reduce your safety risk, which is another thing, right? Fatigue employees are known to have more accidents. And then finally, it can, if you have a lot of overtime, you can really decrease productivity. Again, studies show that after 50 hours, productivity really sinks. So, a lot of costs associated with overtime. So how many hours a week do you think managers spend trying to create and manage their employee hours? I know it's up on there, but any guess, John?
3.14 hours?
Yeah, 3.14 hours per week, just making out schedules. But, a lot of our clients spend an additional 1 to 2 hours a day just managing call-off absenteeism. people not showing and having to call around and get someone else in and back and forth, back and forth. So it's very, very costly, as all of you already know. And you guys recognize these headaches, that's why you're with us, and the best thing is to try to avoid them. So again, all sides of the equation feel the stresses of mismanaged scheduling, employees, employers, and customers. So it's really probably time to start to look at how can these scheduling tools help us? How can they maximize the return on investment, improve productivity, and help make happier customers and happier employees? So I'm going to turn it over to you, John. How do you really solve scheduling issues?
Well, having a software in place is obviously very important, right? I was giving the example of my mother-in-law and her work, and that's all done on paper. Now think about it. There's 10 employees. I have to write that same name down, 3 times 10. That starts to add up. Whereas if that schedule is going to be the same most of the time, what can I do, right? Am I just going to make one copy and then copy and paste and then scratch out and then write it again? No. Right? So having software in place is very helpful because now you can create a template in the system that says, okay, this is my standard, and now I can adjust from my standard template from a week-to-week basis, right? So what that does is it helps improve speed. So now I'm not having to recreate the wheel every single week or every single day, if you want to look at it that way. I can have that template set up for that. It's helping me with accuracy, too, because now I can start to look and see, okay, I've budgeted this amount, I'm scheduling this amount, am I going over those, right? And that's going to be important to be able to see so that I make sure I don't go over my labor budgets. Also, you want to be able to quickly make updates to the schedule so that, somebody fills in, I can quickly put that into the system. I quickly notify the employee, letting them know that, hey, there's a change in the schedule. But also giving employees some say in when they work is also an important piece of that puzzle too. So being able to give them the ability to say, yeah, I'm okay with working this shift, not this shift, and this shift, right? Or something comes up for somebody, instead of the manager trying to fill in, maybe the employees are swapping them out together to fill in those gaps, right? All of those are helpful tools to be able to help improve scheduling. A study conducted by the city of Seattle found that the employees were willing to take a 20% pay cut if it would guarantee them at least one week advance notice of their schedule. Think about that. Somebody's willing to cut 20% of the pay just so that they know when they're scheduled to work, because they can plan out their lives ahead of time, right? So the more notice you give them, the better you are in retaining those employees. You can look for conflicts, right? If I write a name on a schedule, right, on a calendar, and do I really know, do I have people overlapping, right? Because maybe they work in other areas. Are they overlapping, right? That becomes a big issue too, especially when they're working from one location to another. How do I really know some other manager hasn't picked them up and has them scheduled somewhere else as well, right? Those are important things to look at. You can't just do that with a piece of paper. You can't have managers calling each other, because now you're extending that 3.14 hours to now more like days to create a schedule. And that's why people will say, it's so complex to create a schedule. The reality is, the very first time you create a template, yeah, it's going to take you some time to create that template. But after you create that template, guess what? It's really the same thing over and over again. It's just a matter of who you're putting in those little pieces of puzzles, right? And that's going to be important. And that also helps keep the employees happy and improving the attendance, because now they know when they're supposed to be working, right? They have insight into it. You can give them that access to say, yeah, I'm going to work these shifts, so they feel like they're a part of this. And guess what? If you allow your employees to help schedule themselves, that reduces the time from a manager's standpoint to actually create a schedule, right? And they can be doing other things that are more important.
So a lot of times you have last-minute changes, right? How can a system help with the last-minute changes on the schedule?
Well, there's a lot of things that can go around with that, right? I can look at, qualifications. We were talking about this earlier, right? Do I have the right qualifications to fill in for somebody? And that could be difficult for a manager to do without a system, right? I may know that, Michelle has a certification, and so does, Rob and everybody else, but maybe there's somebody else who doesn't have a whole lot of hours that I can fill in that has the same certification. If I don't have that information in front of me, I just don't know it. And that goes back to having that 20% of the workforce working more than 60% of the overtime hours, right? Because again, I always know Johnny Reliable is going to be there to be able to come in and do the job, right? But you also want to make it easy for somebody to make those updates, right? It can't be this cumbersome process of go here, 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 and now that's been updated. You want to be able to give them a lot of different views to be able to see so that they can say, okay, I see I have some open gaps here. I'm going to go ahead and schedule people in here now. Or I know that this person's a no-show. Let me go ahead and fill it in with this person, right? So being able to see that, in real time is also important. It's important to be able to see that in real time because now you can look at who's actually currently here. Because if I'm calling Johnny, but he's already at work and he's working somewhere else, well, guess what? I already have to go to somebody else, right? And I've just wasted a minute talking to him and wasting a minute of his time, of his productivity, because I had to make that phone call, right? And if you look at, automation, employers have reported that they can reduce about 53% of the time of scheduling their employees by using an automated software, right? Or just having some sort of software available to them.
So another thing that we talked about is it can improve your margin. How does that work with the system?
Well, when you look at scheduling, right, you're scheduling because you want to make sure you don't go over your budgets, right? If you look at, we'll look at a manufacturing line, right? I have so many orders that I need to fill, right? And I may have somebody that's looking at how many orders I have, and now I have to schedule, the employees accordingly because I know that I can make X amount of widgets per hour, right? And that's going to equate to finishing this order around this time. And then I've got to do a new order that needs to go out, right? So if I'm doing that with, again, pen and paper, that's very difficult, right? But if I have software in place that shows me, okay, this is how we're doing here, let's go ahead and take that information now and say, I have these orders, this is how many people I need and how many hours it's going to take to complete. So now I can schedule against that, right? That's going to help me improve my profit margin because now I can schedule to my orders, right? Or I can look at it a different way, right? I have a fixed bid on a location to go out there and clean, and if I go over that allotted amount, I'm losing money because of my fixed bid, right? So you can look at it that in either scenario that either way, scheduling is going to be important because I have some sort of budget in place that's going to allow me to stay, in my profit margins, right? And I don't want to erode those profit margins by, scheduling overtime when it's not needed. But it can also give me insight into, am I bidding on these correctly, or do I need to change my bidding process to account for all of this?
Well, finally, I think that we see in today's workers more and more, they would like flexibility. They'd like a better control of their schedule. How do you see that playing out with the systems of today?
So there's a lot of different things that happen. We'll text each other, they'll email each other, like, hey, when are you scheduled to work? Can you fill in for here? And then they'll go to their manager and ask them if it's okay, right? So that's great that they're going about that and doing that. And there's also the times where they just go up to their manager and say, hey, I'm not available to work, on this day, right? And now that manager has to fill that in, right? Or has to try to persuade them that they can't do that, right? And that becomes important from a standpoint of not knowing ahead of time that these are happening and having the employees, I wouldn't say go out of the system, but emailing each other and texting each other. Well, how about give them a process in place, right, that gives visibility to the manager so that they can see, okay, this person requested this shift swap with this person. Guess what? This person's going to go into overtime. I can't approve that, right? And I can give a reason why I can't approve it is because, hey, it's going to put you into overtime, right? And, having a system that's able to look at all these different rules from an OT standpoint or even shift differential standpoint and things like that, those are all important pieces, again, to stay within your budget. So those are the things that are important for them.
All right. And then finally, we talked about compliance risk. We've mentioned that there is compliance risks that are associated with not really watching schedules and how you're managing your employees.
Yeah, so, how do we minimize those compliance risks, right? When we have, I shouldn't go back 1 second here, but there have been laws that have been put in place in different cities and different states that, let's say you have to give the employees a schedule between 48 hours and up to 2 weeks, right, depending on the law, right? And those are the predictive scheduling laws that are coming out, because it's important for these employees to know when they're scheduled to work. We talked about this throughout, right? They need to be able to plan for their own, lives as well. But also, it's helpful anyways from an employer standpoint, because now you know when these employees are scheduled to work and when they're going to show up, right? If you look at the Economic Policy Institute, at least 17% of the U.S. workforce is operating under irregular work shifts, right? So their shift times are really whenever, right? Or it could be middle of the night, it could be, in the evening, or you could have a standard, during the day, right? They're irregular, or they're not always the same, right? And that could be an issue all to itself. If you look at 38.5 million hourly workers, they sometimes don't have paid sick leave or have caretaker flexibility, or, they have medical or family protections that are going on, right? Those are things that need to be taken into account while you're scheduling, but also those become compliance risks when you're not taking advantage, or not taking advantage, but ensuring that you're putting those safeguards in place that say, okay, well, if you're on, FMLA, let's make sure that we don't schedule, right? Because I can't. Or, if I can't get somebody to watch my daughters, that's going to be an issue. I can't come to work that day, right? So being able to have flexibility in those schedules, being able to analyze the data, and being able to really communicate the schedules and identify all of that, that all becomes important, as well as understanding, how is this going to cost me as an employer by scheduling out these employees.
Well, just to wrap up this part of our talk today, 72% of companies implementing new scheduling software do see that it helps them, and it helps them build and customize schedules, in a lot less of the time than it takes doing it manually. It helps them match the job requirements to the job and the employee, and it helps them revise shifts on the go when you have those last-minute call-offs or absenteeism. And then finally, it really helps to really see day by day where you are profitability-wise, and see how you did against what you're trying to accomplish to make your budget. So there's a lot of good reasons to do it, but I think it's time, John, to show our audience what our scheduling software looks like that is within our time and labor management platform.
For sure. And what we'll look at is creating a schedule, creating templates, how to drag and drop people into those schedules, and looking at overtime qualifications, proximity, and then we'll look at from a swapping and bidding process. And finally, looking at it from an analytical standpoint to see, am I doing well against scheduling against my budget, right? And all of those are going to be important things. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring up the system here. So I'm logging in, and we're going to go into time, all right? So as we start looking at time here, I'm going to be brought into my dashboard. However, we're going to be working in our scheduler, right? But things to note here is that I may have exceptions because an employee's early, they're late, they're a no-show. I want to be able to see that I have those exceptions and where those exceptions lie. But as I go in and I create a schedule, right, I'm going to be scheduling by department, right? And that's kind of a neat thing, right? So I'm not really scheduling by employee, I'm scheduling by department in here. And why that's a neat thing is because now I can go into here and I can say, I can schedule my entire department. I can see, okay, I've got all of these different slots that are available, right? And we'll talk about what a slot is in just a second. But being able to have a template set up means that I don't have to, redo this complex schedule every week, right? And you can use features such as auto extending so that I don't have to, again, do a manual copy in here from a week-to-week basis. I can just have this auto extend with or without the employees assigned to the schedule, right? And I can base it off of a template, or I can just say do it based off of the previous week. And maybe I have certain time frames there that I need to schedule more people versus not, right? And I can say that this schedule is available between this time frame and then ends on this date. But then maybe I have another schedule that's scheduled starting from that date and moving forward, so that the different variances in terms of number of resources that I need, I can manage that, right? You may also have rotating work weeks, right? You work 36 and 48 hours, right? You can set those types of things up in the system as well, right? Now, the other thing you can do though now is you can create your slots. And a slot is a combination of a position and a shift, okay? And what we're doing is we're specifying how many people do I need, right? So one slot equals one employee, right? In my case here, I've got 2 total slots that I need. I have 1 slot open, which means I have 1 person that I need to schedule. So now when I go to assign, I can start to look at things such as availability, right? Are they not able to work on, Monday through Wednesday because they have school between a certain time frame, right? So maybe they're not available to work during that time frame. I shouldn't be scheduling them. Maybe on a rare occurrence, I may ask them to, come in a little bit early, but I want to be able to see that, are they available to work during that time frame? Because there's going to be a higher likelihood that they're going to show up if they are available. I can also look at proximity here. How far away are they from the job site? That can be an important piece for me as well, because now that employee doesn't have to travel as far. I can schedule them by how far away they are from that job site. All right. I can also look at my qualifications here. Are they qualified? And I can filter out based off of my qualifications here. So I only see the people that are available to me that meet those right qualifications. But now as I'm scheduling, right, I can see their hours worked. I can see their scheduled hours, and guess what? I've got some anticipated overtime, right? Or if they have a daily overtime rule, is there any kind of daily overtime rule that is anticipated here? And I'm able to see that information in here, right? Now, one thing is you can either assign these employees into the schedule, which says, you know what, you're going to be working here, or we can set them up to be bid. So maybe I have 1 slot available, but I want to make it available to these 2 people to bid on, right? So if I say, Alessandra, we're going to go ahead and put you in there, that's because it's the last one, not me, but we're going to allow you to go in and bid on that shift, right? And I can select multiple people there. So maybe I have 1 slot available, but, I make available 5 people to bid on that shift. So that's an important piece from having the employees schedule out versus the manager scheduling out those employees. Another feature that you may look at is maybe I don't want them to bid. Maybe I just want them to confirm that they're actually going to show up for their shift. We can do that. So we can send that out, and they can say, yes, I'm going to show up, or no, I'm not going to show up, right? And then a manager has insight into that so that it can schedule other people in, all right? Now, to create a slot in the system, there's a few different ways that you can do that. If I just were to come here and drag and drop, I can select an existing shift here, and I can add in a position, and I can say I need 1 person, right? And I'll go ahead and add that in there. Or what I can also do is I can add a new shift in here on the fly where it picks up what my start time and end time are based off of what I selected in here. And then it also goes ahead and picks up standard rules that we have set up in there by default for you. All right, but again, it's an easy way to be able to create that slot. I can also go in now and I can open up this burger stack and I say plan and allocate. And now I can say, do the same thing here where I can say, okay, this shift, this combination, and I need somebody Wednesday, Thursday, I need 4 people, right? And it adds that in there. But on, Monday, I only need 1 person. So I can use drag and drop to make it very easy for me to add these slots in here. And if I want to look at this on a per day basis, I can look at it on a per day basis, and you'll see it gives me more information while I'm looking at it. But then I can go in and I can also assign employees from here as well. So if I want to assign Mike into the schedule, I can go ahead and assign him. Now it's telling me I've got an overlapping, which is also important, right? I don't want to schedule somebody who's already scheduled somewhere else, right? So being able to be warned of, hey, by doing this, you're going to be overlapping it, and that employee can't be in 2 places at the same time. It's physically impossible.
We can also go in and, select multiple people here. So if I want to select multiple people and add them to the schedule, I can do that as well, right? So I can go here and I can take them and I can add them in. Now, I had 2 people selected, but you'll see I only have 1 slot that I have scheduled in here. Now it's telling me, hey, there's no open slots. Do you want to proceed and create some? I say okay, and now this is going to update with 2 employees assigned in, right? So that becomes a nice and easy spot for that. I may also want to look at this in a little bit different way, right? So if I just quickly save this, right, I can go in and I can go into my, what we call our employee schedule, and now I can look at it, what I call more of a traditional view. I can see by employee, when they're scheduled to work, and where they're working in here. And I can also see that, hey, Michelle, she's got overtime in here. She's scheduled into overtime. I can see that because it's visually telling me that from here. Or if somebody's on PTO, I can see that as well. Now, when you start looking at this, the majority of time is spent by a manager, not from the creation of the schedule. It's really in what we call our schedule planner, because this is where you can look more from a future use standpoint, and I can start to see, our employees going to be there, right? And if I have, a bid going on, I can see who's accepted and who hasn't, bid on it just yet, right? I can see that from here. But I can also see, people that have requested time off from here. And if they've requested time off, I can also go in and I can accept it from here. So that I don't have to go somewhere else to see that information. I can see it here and take action on it, right? Or if I want to fill somebody in for this open slot, I can click here and I can add somebody into that slot, right? I can go ahead and assign them, right? Or if I want to fill somebody else in, I want to take somebody off the schedule because they called me and said, hey, they had a breakdown from their car, I can go ahead and update them from the plan in here as well, right? And I can see all that similar information while we were scheduling from a proximity standpoint, a qualification, right? Is there any kind of scheduled overtime, things like that? I can look at that information in here, right? And it just makes it easy for me to be able to make updates. Now, another view that you may look at is what we call our schedule tracker, which is going to overlay the attendance report on top of the schedule. And if I were to come back into time here, I can go in now and I can see, we really call this more of a past tense, right? I can see who's a no-show. I can see who's on time. I can even see who's punched in but wasn't scheduled to work, so unscheduled employees, which is great because maybe they filled in for somebody. I want to add them to the schedule. I can click on them and I can add them to the schedule. Or I can see that Lisa had an early in and an early out. Well, I can open that up and I can see her in and out times, right? And I can see that information. As well as if I wanted to make edits from here, I can make edits to the employee's time from here as well. So I don't have to go back to the timesheets to make these edits. I can make those edits from here. But you'll also see here proximity, qualification, hours worked, et cetera, because I could also say that, you know what, we're going to use Lisa and fill her in for this, right? So, you know, the system allows you to have that flexibility so that you don't have to go to a million different places to be able to do different things. So that is from really creation of a schedule and then how to maintain the schedule post-schedule, right? Very easy steps to be able to do. Now, another thing that you'll look at is other things such as, you know, anticipated overtime reports so that you can run a report and see, okay, who's got some anticipated overtime, right? And you're able to see that information. Now, another thing that you can also do is you can look at the attendance report, right? And I can see, again, who's a no-show, who's early, who's late, who's on time, and I can see all of that from a reporting standpoint. Now, another thing that you can start to look at are some of the analytics, right? And the analytics are going to get into the pieces of information that show you, am I scheduling my employees and am I scheduling them, you know, to my budget, which is going to be important. as we start looking at this information from our analytics, I'm able to go in and I'm able to see different things, right? Now, we've got other things that are in here that really aren't related so much to scheduling, from really touching the employee's punches, which is also an important piece to look at. But now I can start to see, okay, which locations are having a very large amount of overtime scheduled. I see main sites is about 30%. That's pretty high. I should probably talk to them and figure out what's going on there. And maybe it's just a training issue, right? We can train them and figure out, okay, this is how we should be scheduling our employees. This is a better way of doing it. Or I can look at my variances between my budgeted hours and my projected hours and actual hours and start to see, okay, and grade them, based off of that, how are you doing against your budget and scheduling? Because again, maybe it's a scheduling issue. Again, maybe that's Johnny Reliable going in there all the time, and I've got a very high percentage of overtime because of Johnny being scheduled all the time. All right. So this is really from a manager's perspective of looking at that data. When you start looking at it from the employee's perspective, right, the employee's got the ability to go in and view their schedules in here, and I'm doing this through Web Punch, but they're able to go in and view their time information in here. Excuse me. And within here, I can go into my schedules, right, and I can see, okay, when am I scheduled to work, right? So you'll see here, this is an example of shift acknowledgement, where I can say, yes, I'm going to show up for my shift, or no, I'm not. You'll see here, this is one that was a bid, and my bid was approved. I can request a swap out here. If I go to the following week, this will be better, because now I can see everywhere that I have the ability to go out and bid. You'll see I approved my bid over here, but maybe I want to reject it over here. I can put a reason for why we're rejecting in here, so a manager will see those notes in there, right? Or if I want to bid on it, I can go ahead and I can bid on it as well, right? Or if I want to request a swap, I can request a swap, or if somebody requested a swap with me, I can say, yeah, you know what, I actually want to accept that swap. Let's go ahead and do that, all right? It's already telling me I'm assigned there, so I can't be assigned to an overlapping shift. So things are already set up to make sure that things don't get overlapped in there. But if I do want to request a swap, I can request a swap as well. And I can put a reason in here as well. Family emergency, I didn't spell that correctly. That's okay. And I can go ahead and I can, swap that out, right? And I have that ability to go in and request that swap. So those are things that are easy to be able to do from an employee's perspective, but then also from a manager's perspective to be able to see all of that information in a lot of different ways, but also being able to manage those schedules in a very easy way as well.
We have a question that came in. Do you offer a bi-directional API with another vendor? And our scheduling system is actually a part of our time and labor management system. So we do not sell it separately. And so our time and labor clients automatically get our scheduling system, the features that John has been showing you. So I guess the answer is no, there would not be an API to another time and attendance vendor.
That's the only questions that we had so far.
Oh, I think we have one more coming in here for you, John, that I saw. How does scheduling software help when you've got employees in a couple of different roles? How does that work?
Well, there's a couple of ways it can help. All right, if they've got a couple of different roles, right? One thing that comes up a lot in terms of just overall from time and labor is being able to do job costing. So the ability to be able to auto split the employees' hours, so all they have to do is punch in and punch out, but then it automatically splits their time out to different things that they're scheduled to, right? That's a nice piece to have so that you could get job costing based off of those allocations, which is a nice piece, right? But also, if there's multiple managers that are involved that are scheduling, they can schedule the employees appropriately so that, again, as you saw, there's no overlapping for that employee because they can't be in two places or working at two different things at the same time.
If there are any other questions, please feel free to just type them into the box there that says questions, and we'll watch for them. We have one more, though, that came in earlier. How do you correct schedules when an unscheduled employee shows up? Do you recommend people go in and correct the schedule for that unscheduled employee?
I do, because what you're doing is you're actually now putting them onto the schedule. So now it's noted that, yeah, they were unscheduled. And what you can do there is help identify too, were they early, they late, so you can apply appropriate rules based off of the schedule as well. Because if you look at our scheduling software, there's other things that are involved from creating a schedule, right? Not only can do the auto splitting, but shifts also have rules that are associated to them. That could be shift differentials. It could be a per diem that's associated to it, an allowance, a deduction, a minimum number of hours that are worked rules, things like that. And that could all be derived based off of the shift. So being able to have that, updating them into the schedule is going to pick them up on that shift and then also apply all those different rules based off of that as well.
Okay, good. All right, well, I don't see any other questions coming in. I think then we will go ahead and wrap up. I just want to remind everyone that we are a full suite human capital management platform, from applicant tracking to HR management, benefit administration, time and labor management, which includes scheduling, accrual, budgeting, wage and hour compliance, analytics, also a number of different data collection methods, from time clocks, biometric time clocks with facial or fingerprints, to a mobile app with GPS, and even a phone-in or a telephony data collection method. We also handle the payroll and tax management, and we have a performance management module also. So it's a full suite, and it's something that we would love to show you. If you are a current customer of ours, I encourage you to reach out to your account manager or your customer service manager in our 24/7 support center, and we can do an even personalized demonstration and get some education lined up so that you can turn on the scheduling platform and see that you can get some of the benefits that we've talked about here today. Economical benefits and, of course, employee morale benefits. So, John, anything else that you want to add today for today's session?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate that. I think you did a great demonstration, and hopefully those of you on the line got a good taste of what we have, but also some good evidence of why you want to consider scheduling. At the end of the session today, if you don't mind, when you close out, there'll just be a short little survey. Let us know how we did. We'd love to show you more of our full solution, so just let us know, and we can give you a tour or a demonstration. Thanks again, John.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody again for joining us today. I know this is a hot topic, and it's fun to talk about.
Yep. So just let us know if you would like to dig into this deeper, and we'd be happy to help. At EPAY, we thank you for your business if you're already a customer, or if you're not, we hope that we can become your human capital management provider. Have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.